You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to the writingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. We are here on a Tuesday evening and we cannot wait to speak to today's guest. So if you're watching this live, you can please share it around. That'd be fantastic. And equally, if you're listening back on the podcast, thank you very much for doing so. And please feel free to share that as well. It'll help us out massively. Thank you. So hello everyone, welcome to a very special edition of the Writing Community Chat Show. We are here in our Tuesday evening slot. So we're slipping one in between now and Friday. Obviously, we've got a show for you on Friday, another great guest, which we're going to announce later. So we're looking forward to that. But if you're watching now, please tell us what you've been writing this week, how your writing's been going, how your reading's been going. And obviously, if you're tuning in, I'm sure you're interested in tonight's guest and you want to get in a few questions. So please remember at the end of the show, that is your writing community question time. So you can put the questions that you want answers to in the chat and we will get to them. So tonight's guest, we're going into a realm today that we've not been into too often before in terms of spicy romance, and it's going to be really interesting to pick up some really good tips on how to do that effectively, because me and Aga, we've talked multiple times about how terrible we are at writing spicy romance, so it'll be great to get some tips from tonight's guest. So I'm going to stop waffling in and I'm going to wish Aga well, because he is still unwell, so he's not with us tonight, but Aga, we wish you the best. Hope you get well soon and you can come and join us at some point. But tonight's guest, as I've said before, is a fantastic guest. We're going to talk about her book, which is out now, and you can grab a copy of House of Bane and Blood right now, and we're going to talk about it in today's interview. But she's a fantastic author and she's just recovered from an illness herself. So I'm so thankful that she's managed to get her way here today. So ladies and gentlemen, Alexis Menard, here she is. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
We're very good, thank you. Pleasure to be joining you today on the book is out now. People can go and buy it. They can grab their copies and read it. How are you feeling?
I am very excited to finally be out there. It's been a long journey of self-publishing and pitching and just everything. It's been a long road to get here, but it's very exciting that it's finally here.
Yeah, no, definitely. We had a brief discussion, obviously, before the show started, and you said about work. And obviously, people don't often realize the amount of work and effort that goes into writing a novel. So before we kind of get into the road of writing, can you just tell us a little bit about what that was like for you this time around?
Yeah, so writing's kind of been a new thing for me. Well, not for much hobby-wise, but just for work-wise, I guess. I've been writing my whole life, obviously, like most writers, but just recently did I actually try to make something of myself in the writing world. So yeah, it's been, like I said, it's been a long road. I started really trying probably back in 2020, and I finally saw a book on the shelf in 2025. So it took a little bit to get here, but learned a lot along the way. And yeah, it's been quite a ride. But
yeah, I mean, obviously you said before as well, you managed to get out and go and see the book in the wild.
yes.
What's that like for somebody who may be an aspiring author or has never experienced that before? Can you try and capture that moment for us and tell us what it's like to see your book on the shelf?
it makes all those really hard days worth it. All the no's and the rejections and the crying in bed and the days where you're just like, I can't do this, and the self-doubt and the imposter syndrome and everything. It makes it all worth it, and you just kind of forget everything that ever happened, right? All the negative things that ever happened for you to get there. But it definitely is a surreal moment, and yeah, it's just kind of like your little trophy, you get to like just put it there on the shelf, and it's there. And I always said, like, it didn't matter to me to be in a brick and mortar store because I was making good sales when I was doing self-publishing off just Amazon and just being online. But to have it in a store is it's very validating, I guess. So.
Brilliant. Love that. And one of the things that we always ask before we kind of delve into the road to writing is, what is the writing scene like where you're currently living and working? And do you immerse yourself in that? Do you go and speak to people, or do you write with groups, or do you go to reading groups and things like that?
I am I'm a very solo person. I don't have a whole lot of time. I've got 2 young kids and a husband, and he has a very odd schedule. So the time that I do get to write is like 10 o'clock at night to midnight or during nap time. So I don't get to really leave the house much. And I do live in an area where it's kind of difficult to find like-minded people. I live in a very rural area in South Louisiana. So there are book clubs nearby, but they meet at odd times and I can never get there. But I'm trying to reach out and trying to kind of broaden my horizons in that area. But I do have a good group of friends on my Instagram, and I chat to them every single day. I have my writer friends on my Instagram, and we talk. I think I talk to them more than I talk to my own mom. Like, we chat all day, every day. So it's just really good to have those people online. I don't have them here, but like in person, but it's way more convenient, I guess, to have them online anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Right, Alexis, we're going to play a little video now, and when we get back from that, it's the road to writing. So we're going to find out how writing became something in your life. So just play this video. Brilliant. Alexis, if you can, take us back to those very first moments when you realized that writing was something you wanted to do with your life.
So my story started during COVID. I was working as a nurse. I was on a cancer floor, and I was taking care of people that were my age that had stage 4 terminal cancer. And they were, obviously dying at 30 years old. And I just remember thinking, like, do I want to do this till the end of my days? Like, do I want to be a nurse? Do I want to have, is this my calling? Am I living my life's purpose? And I had a baby during that same year, and I was staying home with him because it was very difficult during COVID, and he had a lot of problems, and I had to take him to a lot of specialists. So I had to quit my job. And when I quit my job, I lost my identity because I had done nothing my whole life but work to get a job, to have a career, to have a profession. And when I lost that profession, I'm like, what do I do now? And so I remember just being awake at 2 a.m. with this screaming child who didn't eat and didn't sleep. And I was just like, well, I might as well try to write that book that's been on my bucket list forever. I've always wanted to write a book. I've written books before, when I was young, but obviously I was very dedicated to school and to college and stuff. And so that kind of just fell off. And this was kind of my time. I was like, I have nothing to do. Like, I have no work schedule. Like, I don't have to answer to anyone anymore besides this little tiny person. So I decided to try to write a book. And during those hours where I was awake with a child, I tried to write because I didn't have anything else to do. And that was the time when I was like, oh, wow, I actually sat down and wrote a 400-page book, beginning to end. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It wasn't very good. It was needed a lot of work, but I queried it for some reason because I had no idea it was not very good. And I got a lot of good, positive responses. And people were saying like, hey, you're not there yet, but you have a lot of promise. And so I said, okay. So I wrote another book, and a small press picked that up. And I kept getting just kind of words of encouragement every book that I wrote, and I saw my own progress. And after a while, I don't know, it just became my thing. And the more I wrote, the more I didn't want to not write, if that makes sense. I didn't want to go back to being a nurse because I really, really enjoyed what I was doing. And yeah, it was just a very slow buildup. There's a lot of writers that kind of, especially in my field, like they just get on Instagram and they'll blow up overnight. That did not happen to me. I started my account probably in like 2021, 22, and I grew my account to over 20,000 readers, and it did not happen overnight. It took 5 years to do all of this. And, but yeah, every book just got a little bit better and a little bit better. And then when I had my second child, that's when my idea for House of Bane came, and I sat down and wrote it when she was 5 weeks old in my lap. So it just kind of just stuck with me ever since. So
yeah. How has your writing process changed then? Because obviously you mentioned about like taking those little moments between like when your child was born and like when they were crying and you had those like sleepless nights. So how have you sort of like developed your writing methods like over that 5-year period?
I'm much slower right now. I was writing very quickly when I was, I guess, in my younger writing years, because I didn't understand how much thought I really needed to put into this. And I think that's what's really changed my writing and made my writing more mature was, you know, just challenging myself and pushing myself to think deeper and think and just develop the concepts a little more, and not be so face value. And so that's kind of been my biggest change, is that I've slowed down a lot. I used to be able to write 2 books a year. Now I'm like, I'm kind of pushing out one. I'm still doing about 2, but it takes me a lot longer, and I have to write a lot longer to get the same amount of words out. But, and I do outline now. I was a pantser before, but I'm actually outlining now, and I feel like such a big girl.
So what would ordinarily then, if you you know, your husband comes home, kids are back, and you say, I've had a good writing day today, what would that look like to you? What would that consist of?
Usually, you know, I really do have to just wait till everybody's gone or is sleeping. It's obviously changed because as my kids age, their sleep schedules change, their nap times change. You know, they used to take 2-3 naps a day, and now they don't. And so I can't really write as much during the day anymore. But now I've got one that goes to school full time, and the other one goes part time. So now I have full days where I can just write all day. And it's amazing, and I love it. So that's a really good day for me. And sometimes I get to go out and go to a coffee shop. That's a really good day. But those are few and far between. But yeah.
Yeah, and we try and like give writers a realistic impression, because we've had writers on the show where they say, oh, I write 1,000 words a day. Like we had Adele Parks on last week. She said that, like, I do 1,000 words and that's it, I'm done. We had Ben Aronovich on the show, and he said, I'm happy if I get 150 a day, and that gives me a book a year. So do you work to a word count, or are you going on emotions and feeling for scenes and things?
I do as many words as I can a day, because I never know if I'm going to be able to have tomorrow, you know, just because life is very unpredictable. Like I said, I just got over COVID. So that was a whole week I was out. So I try to just write as many words a day as I can. Sometimes it's only 500. Sometimes it's up to 2,000. It just kind of depends how my brain's cooking that day. But I definitely just try to do as many words as possible, because I have so many books that I want to write that I need to get to, and time is money. And so I just, if I have free time, I'm writing. It doesn't matter if I hit 1,000 words. I'm just gonna keep going because I'm obviously feeling good. So, because I don't know if I'll have the next day, and then I'll get cut behind, So, but I do try to get. I guess I do try to get at least 1,000 a day, just to maintain it.
Do you think your experience as a nurse then has influenced your writing? Not in terms of like ideas, but obviously you're working with terminally ill patients, people who are dying like in front of your eyes in that role, and obviously you talked about the importance of like, making the most of every day. Do you think you would have had that attitude? Was that always there, or was that because of the experiences that you've had in that role?
That was definitely because of my experiences, for sure. I was very naive before I became a nurse, and I was not ready to write books before I became a nurse. I learned so much being on the floor, and I worked as a hospice nurse for a little bit. And so, I definitely witnessed a lot about the human condition, and it affected me personally. I just grew up very quickly. And I learned a lot about just people and life and family and love. And I think those themes kind of show themselves in my work, unintentionally, but it happens just because I think those are just the most important parts of life now.
Yeah. So we like to try and give people advice that are listening to this and watching the show. What advice would you give to somebody who's maybe not started writing yet, but has that idea for a book in kind of a similar situation to you? They're working, they're not able to dedicate the time because they've got other commitments. What advice would you give to them in that moment?
I think you're never going to have time. It's kind of a thing where you just have to make yourself sit down and carve out time, even if it's only 15, 20 minutes. It's 15, 20 minutes you didn't do before, It's really just the discipline of carving out time. I miss sleep. There are periods, like I had a deadline I had to make. I got maybe 4 hours of sleep for several nights straight, and it was rough, but I did it. You just have to sometimes just make time where there isn't time. And sometimes you do have to sacrifice other things. I haven't watched a TV show in a long time because I'm always writing if I have free time. So.
Yeah. And with that then, obviously, when you said you wrote that first book and you weren't, you said it wasn't very good by your own standards. But what do you think you learned then? Obviously, you talked about, planning now and plotting out a little bit more. But obviously you went on quite a unique journey as well in terms of having that first book, and then you talked about self-publishing, and then you talked about going with the traditional press. Like, can you enlighten us to sort of why you made that journey and why you made those decisions to go with certain things at certain times?
Well, I always wanted to get better, and I knew I had a long way to go. So when I was querying, I took any little piece of advice. I went on Readsy. I got editors I hired people, and I was like, hey, could you give me like an editorial letter, just like help me out what's going on? Because I knew nothing. Like, my background's not in writing at all. My last English class was in high school. Like, I tested out of all my college English classes, so I didn't take any college English classes. So it's been a while since I've had to take any kind of course in literature. So I was desperate for feedback and for just everything. So, but it definitely was needed. And because of that, I obviously got a lot better and learned a lot from just my failures, I guess.
And what was that like? Because you were saying obviously before that you had quite a bit of success on Amazon with your own, self-publishing. So I should imagine if you've had a lot of success as an author in that field, like, it must be quite difficult to sort of weigh up the pros and cons between carrying on with the success that you've had, and building your own readership, as you said, like it took you 5 years to build that to 20,000, and then, you know, trusting a traditional publisher to be able to sort of take over some of the reins, so to speak. So what was that for you?
Yes, so that was definitely a big leap of faith, but I knew for my career, I really wanted to get into the traditional publishing field, just because self-publishing is not for the weak. It is difficult. It is expensive. It is competitive. It's not as easy as what a lot of people make it look. There's a lot of people on Instagram that, you know, they just put a book up and then like people just see all these, you know, people just gravitating towards it, but it's very, very difficult. And it got really expensive. And now that my kids are getting older, I don't have the time to sit here and make newsletters and lists and art teams and beta teams. And it's just so very much. So I was very excited to work with Second Sky and Forever and the whole team with them. And I knew they were very trustworthy because my agent was highly recommending them. She's worked with them for a while. So I trusted her, and it was definitely the right path for me, because they have taken so much off my plate and I can just write again, which is really nice. So
yeah, brilliant. Right, so on that, we're going to move on to the second part of the show, which is what's the story. And obviously, House of Bane and Blood, if you could give us the elevator pitch for that when we come back from this little video, that would be great. So, what's the story? So, Alexis, take it away.
So House of Bane and Blood is basically Peaky Blinders meets the magic system of the Grishaverse. In this story, Camilla Marchese marries Nikolai Atano in a marriage of convenience to save her family's railway business. But of course, this deal plunges them into the dark underbelly of an industrial city of Lynchhaven, and it gets very intense. So she has to battle between, you know, finding this serial killer and not falling for her husband to save her family's syndicate.
Brilliant. Yeah, that was a great pitch. Love that. So what, I suppose with Rivals to Lovers then, that is a genre in itself, and that can sustain quite a strong narrative anyway. So what made you add the serial killer element into it? Because that's kind of going into a different realm as well, that could again be a story within itself. Some stories just follow that, you know, trying to find the serial killer type thing. So what made you sort of blend the two?
Well, there's all different kinds of plots, right? You have like trials, and you have mysteries, and you have things like that. And I really liked the idea of having this mysterious serial killer, serial kidnapper in this dark industrial city. It just kind of added to the vibe of the city, I guess, because I really wanted this dark steampunk gas lamp fantasy kind of city. So yeah, it really fit the plot and the story, and it just kind of worked for me.
Yeah. So again, in terms of structure, obviously you've got different voices as well throughout this novel. Again, what was the decision behind that in terms of, you know, different perspectives?
What was that? I'm sorry, I didn't get the last part.
So in terms of structure, so having different perspectives from characters, what made you make that decision rather than just sticking with one perspective throughout?
Well, in Romantasy, dual POV is very popular. People love to have the male POV, which was very difficult for me because I have a trouble giving into my male character's head sometimes. But it is very powerful. And I chose to do that, one, because they both are they're fighting for different things. So Nico is part of something that Camilla doesn't know about. So it kind of adds a nice little tension to the story for the reader to know both sides, but the characters themselves only know their own sides. And it's just fun to play with. And I just enjoyed having these like little secrets that are going on with Nico that Camilla didn't know about, but the reader now knows about it. So it kind of creates this situational irony in a way. And it increases the tension. And in romance, tension is very important.
Brilliant. So on that note, then, obviously I did briefly mention before the show, whenever we get a romance writer on that relationship, me and Aga always try and pick their brains. Something we talk about and something we watch and enjoy, like we'll watch like a romantic comedy and think, oh, that was great. But how do you get that on the page, and how do you create tension and chemistry on the page? What tips have you got for people in that?
Right. So when I first create these people, I make my female main character, because she's the most important. She's the main character. And then I try to adapt like this male main character that would fit her in every single way possible. And so for me, I like to set up tension very early on. I like to set up this secret attraction very early on. A lot of people don't like to do that. They think, oh, it's instant attraction. I don't care if two people hate each other. If they think they're hot, they think they're hot. It's going to happen. It does not matter if it's enemies to lovers. They can still think they're hot right off the bat. So first impressions are very important. So that first time that the character sees their future love interest, that is probably the most important scene in the book. So that's where it's going to set up all of the tension in my book. So that's one tip, I guess. That first impression. First impressions are very important. And then I guess just the whole way, everything needs to just be intense. Everything needs to add tension. So the smallest details do this: the hand brushing, the lingering looks, the look on the lips, the things like that. So just any little thing that you can do to add that tension and that secret wanting is really important.
So when you write your POV for different characters, how do you decide as a writer in terms of how much to include in terms of like internal thought process, and how do you sort of limit that to exactly what you need for the narrative without indulging in a character's sort of mind?
Yeah, I think that is just instinct at some point. It's always hard to find it. That sweet spot where it's like, how much do I include and how much do I not? I sometimes will just lay it all out there, and then I'll pull back as I edit. And so I'll finish the story, and then I'll go back and be like, oh no, she doesn't need to know this here. Let me take this out, and just kind of peel it back as I go. But yeah, so sometimes it's just feels right at a certain time. But I try to save any big impressions till the end, I guess.
And what advice would you have for somebody then if they're tackling a dual POV? What could make their life easier?
I would say remember the voice. The voice has to be different if it wants to be believable. You can't have the same voice for each character. So you should be able to take the names off the top of the chapter, and the reader should know exactly whose head they are in. So that's my biggest piece of advice. And I did that with House of Bane. That was my first time I really tried that technique. I took off the names and I gave Nico his own personality and voice, and I think it worked out for him.
And again, you said you struggled a little bit writing Nico's voice. So like, how did you approach that differently then in terms of what you've done in the past, like to know you'd got it right?
So I like to have a muse. I like to have an inspiration. And of course, my inspiration was Tommy Shelby. I think we don't have enough Tommy Shelbys in Romantasy. We have a lot of Rhysand's, but we don't have a lot of Tommy Shelbys. And I really wanted to write a Tommy Shelby. But I didn't want to do it too much like Tommy Shelby, because I think he was a little too cold for a Romantasy. So it was taking pieces of his character that I enjoyed and then also giving it like just that Nico flair, I guess. And yeah, that was when it just kind of sometimes clicks too. So when I finally figured him out, like he comes from this Italian family and he just loves his family. He's just a big softie, but he's got this Tommy Shelby exterior. That's when it kind of all clicked, his personality to me. And then, of course, when he's interacting with Camilla, the personalities just, they come out so well. So.
Yeah, I love that idea of having a muse and something to go off in terms of like guiding your characters. So again, you talked about before being a bit more of a planner. So I should imagine in the past you're more of a plotter. So how do you find the balance now between letting your characters sort of tell you the story through their points of view in terms of like, when they throw unexpected curveballs at you, but also sticking to sort of original plan that you've made?
I think it's more difficult with the first book because I don't really know them yet until I've written the whole book. I don't really know them so personally, and it's difficult for me to make these choices based on their personalities because I don't really know them yet. So I will outline to the best of my ability, and especially working with my editor, he's amazing. But we try to outline and like, look, this is what's going to happen in every single chapter. But then when you get into the book and you're like, well, this character wouldn't do that. Like this doesn't really make sense for them. So then you kind of have to adapt as you go and then change the storyline. But I feel like sequels are a little bit more simple in that way because you do know them. You know them at this point. You can pretty much like lay out the outline and you know what they're going to do. But that first book is a little hard.
So again, with the romance element, we've kind of covered that in terms of like how you can have tension on the page. But one of the areas that obviously, with it being a spicy romance, what makes it spicy then, and how do you know how much spice to put in to the page, and how much to leave to the reader's sort of imagination?
So it's honestly that's a personal decision. For me, I write very graphic material. I write graphic fight scenes, and so I feel like I can write graphic spice. It's adult. Like, we're all adults. This is a romance. There is sexual relationships, in a romance. So I write it. And I think there's a way to do it tastefully and there's a way to do it shockingly. What I like to do with spice, I enjoy using spice as a tool. So anything that will reveal their character arc or progress their character arc is really important to me. So I enjoy emotional spice. I like focusing more on the emotional side behind it, as well as describing all the physical stuff, of course, because that's, it's fun, but it's also important to their character arc as well. It's not just for shock value. Now, there are books that just write spice for pure shock value, and that's fine. But in my books, in a romantasy where there is a plot and there is an important plot and the romance is part of the plot, I feel like the spice should serve a purpose. That's just, every writer's a little different. Some people like to do it for fun, and some people like me that have a purpose for the spice. So mine's only a few pages. I don't really write very much spice, and it also depends on the characters for me. So Nico and Camilla are they know they're very good looking people and they're very confident. So of course their spice is going to be a little bit more like wild. Then I recently wrote another book where the characters are not like that. They're very reserved people and the spice is very minimal. It's not graphic, and I chose not to write super because it was weird. It didn't make sense. It was just very shocking. So that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In terms of plot then, obviously without giving anything away for people who are going to go and pick up this book today, when did you decide that the plot was more than just an idea and it was a novel that you needed to write?
That's a good question. I honestly couldn't tell you. So I wrote this book at the beginning of 2023, and it's been a while. But I do remember. So again, I was postpartum at this point, and I was watching Netflix, and I stumbled upon Peaky Blinders, and I was watching this one scene where they put their cousin into this marriage of convenience, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. We're going to write a marriage of convenience, and we're doing it with mafia, and we're going to do it in an industrial city, and it all at once just kind of like clicked into place. And I feel like writers have that little eureka moment where you're like, oh my gosh, this is the idea. Like, this is the idea that I can run with. And I knew there wasn't really anything Peaky Blinders inspired in the market at that time. So I felt like, okay, this is my little foothold. This is my niche. I can write this. I can do a good job at it. And hopefully this will be my book, my book that finally gets like a little bit of attention. And thankfully it did. So, but yeah, it just kind of clicked all together.
Do you know what was inside you in terms of like, oh, I want to put all these pieces together? What was it that made you think that's the idea and I'm going to do a great job at that because I can do it?
I have been obsessed with this world for a while. I've always wanted to write an industrial city, something like a gaslit fantasy. I played a video game a very long time ago. I talk about it all the time. It's called Dishonored, and it inspired a lot of this story. And I knew I wanted to write a book in a city like that, and with the dark and gritty and all that good stuff that I love so much. And I personally was looking for that book to read, and I could not find it. It was very difficult to find like a gaslamp fantasy. So that wasn't like Victorian. I wanted industrial. So I decided to write it.
Nice. Yeah, that's definitely really good advice for people. If the book out there, if it doesn't exist, maybe just write it yourself.
Yeah.
So obviously we've had the elevator pitch. If you could send a message to potential readers now, what would you want to say to them?
That's a good question. Please buy it. Yeah, I don't know. That's a stumper.
So if we flipped it then and we said, if you, because the publishing industry loves comparisons, if you like this, you might like, so obviously Peaky Blinders is obviously a given, but have you got any more that if you go, if you like this?
Well, if you like the 1920s mafia and the Grishaverse magic system and all that, that's my go-tos. That's what I've been pitching for most of this time. But
and again, obviously, we talked a little bit about magic as well. Like, how difficult is it as an author to create a world like that, where you've kind of got to create your own rules? Like, how do you go about doing that?
Every book is a little different. Every world's a little different. Sometimes I come up with the magic first. Sometimes the world's first. In this case, the world came first, and then I had to find a magic system that kind of fit into it. But it kind of helps having the world first, because then I have boundaries and I know what would make sense in this world and what wouldn't. So for this world, I knew I didn't have any mythical races or anything. I just had humans and just people. So I had to figure out what magic system would make sense, or how these people would have magic. How would some people have magic and how some people wouldn't have it? And then the people who didn't have it, what would they use for the people against the people that didn't have magic? Because of course, in any society, if one person has something, the other group is going to have something to kind of counterbalance it. And so that's where I got this idea of magic versus science, because I feel like in today's world, if there were people with magical abilities, we would also have scientific endeavors to counterbalance that. So if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. I love that. It's brilliant. So in terms of writing the novel as well, if you could go back, and again, without giving any spoilers, and write your favorite moment again, which moment would you choose if you can, without giving us any spoilers?
There is a fan favorite and then my favorite scene where I honestly don't know where I got this idea from, but the characters are interrogating each other, and they're doing this by drinking this magic liquor that makes you throw up if you lie. So of course they're both lying, and of course they're both just like vomiting. And it's fun to play with because they ask like more personal questions and then they get on each other's nerves, and it was just really fun to write, and it's been a favorite for sure.
Brilliant. And obviously, again, in the back of the book, you talk about how important, obviously, your family are, and your sister in particular. What is that like? When you finish the book, do you send it off to your editor first? Do family get first dibs on the reading of it? Like, how does that work?
I like for everything to be done before my family reads it. But yes, my sister always gets her advance copies before anyone, of course. I would not be here if it wasn't for my sister, because she handed me I was reading straight fantasy before, and I was like, I don't know why, I just can't get back into fantasy. She's like, oh, try this book. And she hands me A Court of Thorns and Roses. And I would not be here probably if I didn't know that this whole genre existed. Because like I said, I was in nursing school. I was completely, my head was in the sand. I was not I wasn't reading at all. So when I finally got out and could read again, she showed me this amazing genre, and I've been hooked ever since. So
brilliant. Yeah, I love that. Right, so we're going to move on to the third part of the show now, which is community question time. So if you're watching live and you want to send us a question, you can do that via YouTube. Unfortunately, because Agat's not with us, I don't know how to get the questions from elsewhere. So if you're watching on YouTube live, you can send us some questions. And we're going to ask our staple questions as well. So just after this video, that's when we'll do it. Brilliant. So yeah, this is the community questions time. So if you've got your questions, we've got about 18 minutes for you to send them in, and we'll try and ask them on the screen as well. But first, we're going to ask Alexis some of our staple questions. And one of those staple questions is, if you could take any character from fiction and make that character your own, which character would you choose and what would you do with them?
Any fictional character and make them my own. That's hard. Gosh. You gave me the hard one right out of the bat. My favorite character is Claire Fraser from Outlander. She is probably one of the best female leads in any book I've ever read. So I would say her for sure.
Cool. And what would you do with that character then? What would be your idea?
I don't know. I don't know. I would write her own book, I guess. With her own
Yeah, I love that. So another one of the staple questions that we ask, again, this is quite a tricky one, but if you could change the ending to any fiction, what would you change the ending to and why?
Any fiction?
Yeah. So TV, film, novel, whatever.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm watching a Korean drama right now called Alchemy of Souls, and it just ended and I disliked it. So I would change it. I didn't like who died. But anyway, so
yeah, so change it. What would you do with the ending of that? Obviously, people may watch that as well. What would you do?
So like, it's like episode 18 in part 1. How it ended there, I would have kept it like that. Everybody was happy. Everybody was getting betrothed and married. And then all of a sudden, like, the evil guy figures out a way to like control this girl's soul, and she goes on a murder spree and she just kills everybody. And it just was so sad. And I was so sad. But yeah, and she died. So then it's like a whole nother season I'm not happy with, but
Yeah. No, painful, definitely. Yeah, so again, just if you are watching now, you can send your questions in. Another question that we have is a bit of a morbid question, but I suppose with your history as being a nurse as well, you might be okay with it.
Yeah.
But if you were on your deathbed and you're looking back at your writing career, what would you be happy with? What is success to you?
I would be proud of myself for at least trying, at least doing. I could rest in the fact I knew I did everything that I could. I was never lazy. I never took a day off. I never let myself take the easy way out. I worked and worked and worked and worked. So that's something I would be happy about.
And obviously you mentioned your children as well at the back of the book, in terms of like for your relationship, if they could skip to chapter 35. So how are you feeling about the prospect of obviously your children growing up and reading your books? Is that something that you're excited by because you could inspire them to follow their dreams?
I won't mind. I think they'll be like cringing, but I definitely wouldn't mind. Yeah, I do this for them. I hope they do. I hope I can, be someone for them to admire. And I hope one day when they're older, I can still take them to the bookstore and they can still see, their mom on the shelf somewhere. I do. My daughter's, she can't read, obviously she's 2.5, but she's obsessed with books. She'll just sit there and just stare at words and just pretend like she's reading. And it just makes my heart feel so good. So, but yeah, they'll take my books off the shelf and they'll like open it up and point to my picture and they're like, Mom, it's you. And so that's always a very good feeling.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I'm just going to stick on the family element because even though you can't see them so well here, I'm going to try and hold them up. Obviously you talked about the art that your husband helped get commissioned and done. Why did you feel that it was important to have those images at the front? And is that, obviously this is a proof, but is that something that you want as well in
Yes. So in my indie books, those were of course where the POV their first POV's chapters came in. So anything you can do when you're an indie author to give yourself like a little bit of an edge is really helpful. So putting interior art into a book, it really helps sell. And it definitely helps sell my first copies, because when people don't know what your book, like how your quality of writing or anything, when you're just a new author to them, if they can at least know that they're going to get a quality looking book, they usually will buy it. So getting a really nice cover is always really helpful, but also putting that interior art and then the map, it just makes it look more professional, and it makes it more competitive against these beautiful trad books who have these beautiful like embossed covers and sprayed edges and stuff. So just anything to get a little bit ahead,
Nice. And what's that like in terms of like, when you have something in your imagination and then you're trying to put it into a different art form, how do you convey that sort of idea to somebody else?
I find really talented people who can pull it out my brain. I don't know how they do it because I can't draw. I can't help them at all. So I just send them a couple Pinterest pictures and somehow they piece it together and they do an incredible job. I am always shocked what these artists can do. And yeah, I'm very grateful for them because that honestly helped sell so many of my books the first publication. So it was very lucky.
No, I love that. Some really good tips here coming out for people who are going down the self-published route. If we could just stay there for a minute, because again, we have a lot of people who listen to this show that are self-published and are looking to elevate their game, or they're looking to make that step into traditional. What 3 tips could you give them in the self-publishing genre? And then what 3 tips could you give to somebody who is looking to be traditionally published?
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, as a self-published author, I would really say don't skimp on your covers. You could write an incredible story, but if it doesn't have a professional looking cover, people aren't going to give you the time of day. And it's really frustrating, especially with Amazon's new guidelines. They're not pushing new releases as much as they used to. So it's getting even more difficult for self-published people to find readers. So I would really say people do judge books on covers. Get a good cover. Some people can do their own covers. Some people cannot. I cannot. So if you're like me, I would spend, a good amount of money on a cover. Definitely budget for that. Budgeting is very important. It's everybody's a little different. I had a certain amount that I wanted to spend, and I knew that I could sell so many books to at least pay myself back. So I don't skip on cover or editor. Please get a good editor. As far as any other tips, social media is very important. We hate it, but it's very important. If you don't want to show your face, you don't have to. People always say you have to show your face. I don't believe you do. I really don't show my face anymore. And all of my videos that have really done really well, my reels and my TikToks, they've all been without my face. So don't feel like you have to use your face. But social media is very important. Get a TikTok. If you're an indie writer, you have to have a TikTok. You don't have to, but it's very, very helpful. And then Instagram is always great because you can kind of keep all your readers, in one place. And then lastly, find friends. Find a good group of writing friends who are going to keep you sane, who you can ask questions to, who you can vent to. You don't want to vent on the internet. That's very bad. And people do not like it when writers complain on the internet. So find your people, vent to them, be professional online, everything.
Yeah, that's great advice for somebody who's obviously going down the self-published route. I'm going to add a little one there as well, because you said any sort of step up. We had a conversation with C.K. McDowell at Harrogate's Crime Writers Festival, and at the back of his latest book, he had a QR code, and when you scanned it, it sent you to a 12-minute video that he'd made for when you'd finished reading the book. And I'd never seen that before, and I thought it was genius, because he was talking about the characters and the ending and things like that, and it just gave you a real personal insight into what he was thinking. So I'm going to add that in there, and I think, Alexis, that would be something that you may be interested in doing as well. So that's why I mentioned it, because
that is a great idea. Yeah, anything to give yourself just an edge, just be a little different than everybody else. That's a really great idea.
And in terms of moving then, in terms of like trying to secure a traditional publisher's route, again, what tips could you give to somebody in that field?
Get a good agent. No agent is better than a bad agent. I've been blessed to have a great agent from day one, but I have had friends that just don't luck out in that category, and they get let down and they waste, a year, 2 years just sticking with someone who isn't out for their best interests. So finding a good agent is so important if you want to do well in the traditional publishing field. I got very, 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 very lucky. I still don't know how I got Emily, but I got her, so she's stuck with me. Anyway, any more traditional tips? Yeah, know your worth. They need you. You don't need them. So that's another big thing. Don't ever sell yourself less than what you deserve. Because I now know my worth. I know that I could publish a book and make a good amount of money. So when I go to, a publisher's table, I know that they need to make me a good enough offer, because I could go take this book and sell it I can, make a good amount of money off of it. So it definitely has to be worth my while now to sell to a publisher, which gives me a little bit of power at the table, which is nice. And also don't wait to build your readership. So just because you might be querying agents right now, still start building your platform, start your social medias You know, unfortunately, we live in a day and age where it might not be enough just to publish, you know, without having your name out there. And it can actually be a little easier if you are on social media and you do have a good following and, you know, you are talking to people online and stuff. So it is helpful attracting agents and publishers. Sorry.
Oh, it's all right. We're close to the hour mark. And but what I will say, obviously, yeah, we'll try and get it in before it gets louder. So one of the things that we do at the end is, where can people find all information about you? Where can they buy your books? And where can they, again, use social medias and things like that?
So I am mainly on Instagram and TikTok at Alexis L. Menard. You can find, I have a website, alexislmenard.com. I'm in all the bookstores now. Yeah, you can find me on Amazon, any brick and mortar store, all over. So
brilliant. And I've never done this before, but I'm going to start it with you, Alexis. So we got a guest on Friday. What I want to do is get a question from Alexis that we can ask that guest. So can you give us a question that we can ask on Friday to our next guest?
Can you ask them what is next for them in their publishing field, in their publishing career, or their goals? What are their goals?
What are their goals? Right, brilliant. I'll ask them that. And that does lead me on to what I was going to ask you, which is, what's next from you?
What is next?
In the future?
I have so much on my plate right now. I just sent a book to my editor to get line edits, so that's coming out. I don't have a date. I can't say anything because I'm in a contract. I also just did something else that I can't talk about, but I will be announcing it soon. So everybody should go follow me so you can hear my good news soon.
Brilliant. We love that. And I'm sure people will do. Again, if you're watching or listening back to this show, thank you very much for your support. And please support the authors who come on the show and support the show. And yeah, we've got 3 interviews this week. So obviously we've had Alexis today. We have Sir Tony Robinson, the interview that's already pre-recorded that drops on Thursday. And then we have CJ Lead on Friday. So fantastic interviews all week for you to get your ears in and eyes into. So yeah, if you enjoy tonight's show, please like and share it around. And again, support the authors who support the show, and go out and get Alexis's book today, because you'll definitely enjoy it. Again, if you love the Peaky Blinders and you love that romance element as well, rivals to lovers, what's not to love there? And magic thrown in for extra measure, and obviously that hunt as well for serial killer as well. So lots of different things there that are definitely ticking major boxes for people. So yeah, go and pick that up. But thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Alexis. And now we'll do the little end of show video and a little wave, if we don't mind.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. See you on Thursday.